Hello, this is Todd from TTBikefit, and we're going to talk today about setting up the Adamo saddle. This is a saddle that has proven very effective for a lot of riders, especially in the aero position for long course races. It can really improve comfort if set up properly. It's a saddle we've been using ourselves for quite some time, and it has been a real revelation from the standpoint of improving saddle comfort. But it certainly has to be set up properly, and we're going to talk about that today. The first thing I want to point out is the proper seating position on the Adamo saddle. You don't want to be sitting all the way back on these saddles. You do want to have 1.5 to 2 inches of saddle sticking out behind you. You want to be able to see the emblem on the side of the saddle, and you want to be able to see the embroidery on top of the saddle. From the top of the saddle, you'll be able to see that it's a racing saddle as this one. You'll be able to see the crescent emblem behind the rider. You'll be able to see, as I said, the embroidery, the ISM racing embroidery. You'll be able to see that clearly. Even when the rider's sitting up, we should certainly be able to see part of that crescent and the embroidery there. So 1.5 to 2 inches of the saddle sticking out for sure. One thing you want to check before you install your Adamo is to figure out your fore-aft seating position on your current saddle. You want to know under power, under load, where you normally sit. Here I'm just using a plumb line behind the rider to give a reference point for where the rider normally sits fore-aft. So once we have the Adamo set up, we want to make sure that we're sitting in the same spot fore-aft, that we don't change any of the bike fit characteristics. Another thing we're going to want to check before we install the Adamo is to check our saddle height on our existing saddle. Certainly you can measure this in a variety of ways, but a potentially more accurate way to do it is to get on and unclip from the pedals and put your heels on the pedals and pedal backwards, both heels, and get a feel for how much distance to the pedals you have at the bottom of the pedal stroke. Typically your heels will just barely be coming off the pedals, or will just barely be maintaining contact with the pedals. So that's you want to remember that feeling, and when you have the Adamo set up, it should feel the same way. Frequently the Adamo is higher than regular saddles, so you may have to lower your seat post 1/4 to 1/2 centimeter to match the seat height. Now here we have an Adamo race lined up with a conventional saddle, and to demonstrate the approximate fore-aft position relative to a conventional saddle. The nose is about 2 inches further back than the nose of a standard saddle. The rails are about even with the rails of the normal saddle, but the back end of the saddle does project about 1.5 or 2 inches further back typically than your conventional saddle. So that gives you a very rough idea, but a pretty good idea of where the Adamo should be set fore-aft relative to conventional saddle. If the rails of your conventional saddle are pushed all the way forward in the seat post clamp, then the rails of the Adamo will probably also be pushed almost all the way forward in the seat clamp. They may be slightly further back, but it should be pretty similar. Here we have a road, Adamo road, again showing the line up here, the nose being shorter by a couple inches, the tail sticking out about 1.5 or 2 inches further back, and the rails of the saddle, the two saddles match up pretty well. From the top, again just to show the relative alignment, a couple of inches sticking out behind. Clearly the emblem is well behind the Adamo emblem on the side. The front of that is a rough guideline to the where the back of a conventional saddle would be, and of course the nose a couple inches further back. From the side here, again, we look at the rider. You can see how the contour of the saddle, when the rider's in the right position, fits in with the rider's legs, and the amount of saddle projecting behind the rider, the typical 2 inches or 1.5 inches or so of saddle. Now the tilt is extremely important with the Adamo. It's important with any saddle, but probably more so with the Adamos, and if you don't get it right, the saddle is just not going to work for you. So as opposed to a regular saddle, we're not going to focus on the angle of the seating surface, but we're going to focus on the tilt of the rails. The initial reference point that I use is to set the saddle with the rails level. And you can see I'm holding a level under the rails, and we're going to set those level, and that's typically the starting point I use. That right there can be the perfect amount of tilt depending on your actual position. If it needs to be adjusted, typically it'll need to be adjusted up just a few degrees from level. So just tilt it up a slight amount there like I did 2-3 degrees. And the way to tell whether you need to do that, one way is if you go out and ride and you feel yourself sliding forward on the saddle, then you need to tweak it up a degree or two until you stop sliding, and that's probably the perfect position. So bring a tool out with you on the first couple of rides, and if you feel yourself sliding forward, then tweak it up. You'll know you have the nose tilted too high if you feel the noses of the saddle poking you in an area you don't really want to be poked. So if you do feel like the nose is poking you, then you will need to tilt the nose down by a few degrees. As opposed to a regular saddle, like I said, if the seating surface is level as we show here, you're almost definitely going to feel like you're getting poked. The front end of the saddle is going to be too high in almost every case, unless you have a very upright seating position perhaps. But typically for any type of an aero position, you're definitely not going to want the saddle seating surface level. Note that when it's level that the rails are actually tilted up quite a bit. So we want those rails level or close to it, as I said. Here I'm drawing a level line on the rails, and just to show the amount of range we're talking about when you're tweaking the saddle. Here I'm tipping that line up 2 or 3 degrees, and pretty much that's all the range we need to play around with to get that tilt just perfect. So don't be afraid to tweak it on the first few rides. Bring a tool out there with you, and you'll get the feeling just right. Also, you don't want to forget at the end to check that saddle height again, either measuring or using that heel and the pedal method that I showed you before, because frequently, as I said, the Adamo is a little bit higher than a standard saddle, so you may well need to lower your seat post just a fraction of a centimeter. One last tip, we've noticed that some people need an adaptation period with the Adamo. It redistributes your weight from the perineal area to the sit bone area, and this really has a muscle group associated with it, and so some people do get some soreness initially in this area. So it may take a few rides, it may take up to 7 rides or so for this muscle group to adapt, but it will adapt. So in that case, we would recommend not going over about 30 miles a ride until the muscles adapt and the soreness subsides.